Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Policy Committee of the Athens in Motion Commission. As usual, I'll pull up our agenda. Hi, Elliot.
Hey, Elliot.
Okay, I can do this.
It's great news about the boat launch.
Yay, the boat launch.
Yes.
Yeah.
We support all kinds of alternative transportation, including along the Little Oconee River.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so excited about that. I can't wait.
Yeah. I wrote Denson and Hamby about it. So
I called everybody and I wrote to them too. And Ovita was the only one who, well, I didn't speak to Mariah Parker, but Ovita was the only one, Commissioner Thornton was the only one who seemed like she could go either way. So.
Yeah, I sent a little short clip taken out on the North Oconee because I feel like if you haven't been out there, you just don't know.
Mm-mm.
It's
yeah,
like a whole different world.
I paddled and taken out at the Macon Highway Bridge, and it's a tough slog up that hill with a boat. So
Yeah. All right, back to concrete and asphalt. This is our agenda for today. And we are going to try and get out of here before 6. Any comments, alterations? All right.
I move to accept the agenda.
I will second that. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. I have been falling behind my duties to ensure that we are having minutes taken, so we don't have minutes to approve. Sorry, Daniel.
Okay.
That's another one we're gonna have to back write. Can I get someone to write up some brief minutes for us and keep track of any action items, decisions made?
Sure, I'll do it. I'll
Oh.
try to write it on the plane tomorrow.
Thanks,
you,
Teresa.
Teresa.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I appreciate y'all. Okay, complete streets policy rewrite. We don't have any action items here. The full Athens in Motion Commission wanted a little more time to take a look at it, so we will be discussing it at our next meeting and hopefully taking a vote. So that's good. Very exciting. And I'm happy because I don't think my brain can parse policy today. However, can do projects. So one of the things Daniel had mentioned was a data set map, and we're going to talk about like an equity component to our next round of tier 1 projects. Of course, there was Servergate 2021. So
I got the original data back. It's not the really edited, but one positive thing about our meeting last night was I had several hours to rebuild the outline for the data set, so I can review that. It was really helpful to be able to just focus in on that without having to worry about email. So I am going to share my ArcGIS screen. So got a few different things. I'm going to turn these all off right now. So just to kind of show what's going on here, the tiers, the purple is bike tiers. So I'm going to just make sure it's easy to see that. And the orange is pedestrian tiers. And the big, bold, bright colors, those are tier ones. The darker medium colors, like along Oglethorpe, are tier twos. And the very light and light colors are tier threes. So
Can you blow that up at all? Because it's a little hard to see it.
yeah, let's see if I can
Open the window more, yeah. And on the bottom too.
cut down. In fact, I could probably, well, I'll hold this aside just in case. So is the aerial imagery making it more difficult to see?
I was just hoping we could see like the whole picture rather than zooming in, yeah. Okay, oh, that's good.
There we go.
Okay.
So this, as we have it right now, is the bike ped network in the Athens in Motion plan. This particular data that I'm pulling from is what we have from our on our data set on our portal. I'm gonna have to pull this up slightly. And so what I did was I kind of, this is our current data as Hillary had it updated. And so this is kind of up to the point where she was working on it and where she left off. So we have all of her updates that she was including. And I took that and I put it into an Excel sheet because that would be a little easier to see in terms of like how those fields mesh together. But this is kind of what that looks like, and I have it offset. So like for instance, Lexington, I'm gonna zoom in over here. So Lexington Highway from Barnett Shoals to Gaines School, I believe. If we select those, so this is made up of a bunch of different segments, but we can actually look at the highlighted section and we can see that the information about this. So this is proposed to be a separated facility. It's tier 1 project, and it's both bike and pedestrian. You can see it's also, I think over here somewhere there's another tier 1 listed somewhere in this table. Yeah, there it is, head tier. So so anyways, this is kind of spatially what that looks like. We also, so to zoom back out, and I am gonna take off the world imagery and put in a different base map, so it's a little easier. And I believe the dissolve tiers has, here, our segment scores. See if I can find it. Segment scores. All right. Display.
Are segment scores the thing that the tool people were working on, or is this something else?
Right. So you can see here, each project has a project ID, and these different scores represent different types of things. So transit, I know what that one is. Equity, that's where we talked about wanting to see that overlay of equity. So that's actually what I was going to pull up right now. And so we can actually go in and do, I'm going to do graduated symbols based on equity. And we'll just do some gray. And so the minimum size, we want to really be able to see what this means. So those thicker gray areas really show where those higher equity scores are located.
So a higher equity score, does that mean that there is a greater need for equity or greater opportunity to
It's funny.
balance?
Greater need.
Greater
Yep,
need.
it's the greater need.
Greater need.
Yeah.
And it,
Go ahead.
go ahead. It's the scores that were pulled from the social mapping atlas, and that was the higher the score, the greater the need.
Thank you for that clarification. And Daniel, thank you for pulling it up in this way. This is really a great visualization. And I recognize the names of certain streets because I think a lot of us have been looking at the tier 1 projects, trying to decide like how do we approach the next round, and this is incredibly useful.
Yeah, and so I'm thinking, see if this, oh, that's not what I was going for. All right, I have another page to share. It's the Athens motion plan. There we go. So this is equity and the scoring metric, which fed into that. And so you can see they're looking at, and correct me if I'm wrong, but these are all the factors that go into that equity score. And so they looked at public sidewalk to road ratio. If there was a low ratio, it got a higher score. Bus service area coverage, the more bus service area, the higher priority. So that way you can really encourage mobility within Athens. Households with no vehicle had a higher percentage, meant a higher equity score. Population community by public transit. So this is looking at those who commute by public transit more, and prioritizing those areas in terms of higher equity. And then percent in poverty over 65 and percent in poverty under. So the higher poverty percentages for those things will receive a higher equity score. And then all of those, so this is the weight, and then those are overlaid into, I believe one of the ArcGIS tools, probably weighted suitability. And then you get these scores, which are shown in the map.
That's pretty great.
Yes, so this is a great starting point. I think something that we should keep in mind as a commission. Elliot, you reminded me of this, that the plan kind of uses class as a proxy for race. And we notice that in our equity scoring, there's no mention of race, which would be important because people of color have been disproportionately affected by lack of transportation infrastructure or emphasis of building roads and highways over sidewalks and bike lanes and whatnot. So that's just something we should keep in mind, although it is, I mean, I think it's a great place to start. Elliot, did I summarize that right? Because I had appreciated the way you've talked about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think for the most part, I think and this has honestly happened in multiple places where I've lived, where in a lot of ways, like class becomes proxy for race because folks are a little uncomfortable about how to like use like a racial analysis relative to this, particularly relative to transportation and to infrastructure planning. And so I think a number of speakers and folks who we've talked to about Athens in Motion sort of said, yeah, like, you know, if you want to talk about, you know, these issues, in some ways you can talk about it relative to class, but it might also, or income level, but it might also be worthwhile to explore kind of, you know, are these things matching up completely with neighborhoods or census tract areas that are, you know, 90+% say African American or what have you. So not so much that we have all the answers relative to it, more like the data, like to dig a little bit deeper into the kind of that cross section of the data points that we do have.
Yeah, and just to kind of extend off of kind of what he's saying, there are some tools out there. So this is the Athens Social Atlas created by the Athens Wellbeing Project, and you're really able to kind of divide things out. And so to talk about transportation, commute using public transit, this is showing those districts that commute using public transit more. But you know, that doesn't necessarily mean that, you know, you're low income. In this particular instance, it looks like the higher area is actually mostly UGA. So, you know, that's because it is so accessible. But then there are no available vehicle, and you can see right here, and this is something, you know, that I think we highlighted yesterday, that North Avenue project really plugs right into the center of this area. And if you click on it, you can see 13% of people here don't have an available vehicle. And so, and then you can get into demographics as well, which I agree. I think that, you know, it's important to look at those demographics. This is the percentage of Black non-Hispanic population. And so you can really see where some of those percentages are. And then you can go through, you can get, you know, age 18 to 64, 65 and older, all that kind of thing. So, you know, Hispanic, Latinx population, it really helps you explore to see how our equity scores are overlapping with these. And I think there's always room to improve equity scores, you know, and that's something that I think we can work with heavily in the inclusion department. And, you know, as we move forward with kind of redoing the scores every year with the tool that tool designed for us. So yeah, I don't know if I missed anything there, Stephen.
So the only thing I would add is I would recommend, if we are looking to change the scoring criteria at all, we should do that in tandem with our full network rescoring year. So I think that's every 5 years that we rescore the entire network, and we should wait until that cycle to propose new scoring criteria. And I really agree that we should get Crystal in the inclusion office as part of that dialogue. And then what I'm unsure of is if that's something that the Athens in Motion Commission can administratively do, or if that's something that we need to propose to the mayor and commission for that 5-year kind of rescoring.
And would that be, so I know that the plan was approved in 2017. So does that mean that it needs to be approved in 22 or?
It was approved in 2018.
Oh, perfect.
2018.
So 23 would be the approval year.
Yep.
Cool. This is kind of, I pulled the GIS data down into Excel to really kind of be able to take a look at it and look at these fields to see how we could organize them and expand them. And the plan is to kind of merge them together. So this field right here is my proposed network planning data set. This includes both bike and pedestrian, as well as a few other projects. And then this is our existing field. These right here are the Athens in Motion data sets that were provided. So I'm really looking to see how we can tie these into the main data field so that we can both look at the tier, but also what are the scores? What are the individual scores as they came out? So I don't know if you want to get into details on this, but you know, just to kind of give an overview, this is like project context. So, you know, name, status, street, from, and to. And this is getting into the bike plans. So this bike category would be delineated or buffered. And then bike type would be bike lane or share. And so you can have a delineated share or a delineated bike lane. And then protected would be a yes/no field. So you could say this is a protected delineated bike lane. And that really allows us to kind of filter down. Now, if, you know, there are ways that we could cut down on the fields, like we could get rid of protected, and then under category, we could have a protected delineated and unprotected delineated, but there's just so many different combinations. Every time you throw another drop down in, you get exponential fields added. So those are the existing, and then we have proposed.
Hmm.
And so that way we have one roadway and we can see what's existing on that roadway as well as what is proposed in that Athens in Motion plan. I'm interested to see how this can work with our full build out of the network. Like as we have completed projects coming online, you know, the existing would for a little while match proposed, but that's assuming that, you know, standards don't continue to grow and there's always ways to improve. So maybe in a future plan, you know, 20 years, what was new and, you know, awesome is now out of, you know, context and building code and whatnot, safety specs.
Okay, so how do we move forward? We need to come up with our next round of tier 1 projects, but we also need to come up with the tier 1 projects that would be candidates for T-SPLOST funding in particular, because we will be submitting a plan of some sort later this year. Some items like some of the North Avenue bike ped tier 1 projects, those can be covered with the build grant. So that would be the identified funding source for those. Hopefully we get it this year, right? So what is our approach? Daniel, do you think that you want to finesse this data more? Do you want more questions from us about what we're looking for? What does this group need?
Well, I think we have the data. You know, like there's always ways to improve it, but I think it's to kind of look at it and see kind of what you're taking, like where are we at on it, right? So I'm gonna pull up. So we want tier 1s. Do we want to just have like tier 1 for bike and ped, or you know, is that our main goal right now?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do.
And I'm curious about y'all's thoughts on this, especially you, Stephen and Daniel. Do you think that we could submit an Athens in Motion project that was one bucket of bike ped funding, or do you think that it would be better to continue to separate out the funds into 2 buckets, bike ped, maybe if nothing else, just so we could ask for smaller amounts and make it not seem like, I don't know, we're asking for.
It's from staff point of view, it certainly would make it easier if there was like an AIM bucket. We are constantly, you know, as we write contracts and fill out invoices and things, we're trying to do percentage splits so that each, you know, bucket is used, the bike bucket gets used for bike projects, the PED bucket gets used for PED ones. So if you felt like they had, if you felt like they could be put into the same fund together, if we could justify that, the only problem is you would be saying that that also kind of speaks to your priorities, right? If we really thought pedestrian projects needed more money than bikes, we maybe would want them to, or vice versa, we maybe would want them to be separate funding sources. As an example, right now with Barber, we're about to zero out our bike fund, but yet we'll still have money left for pedestrian projects right now. So if this had been done as one big bucket, we would still have a couple $1 million, but we could choose if that would go toward bike or PED. So use that information as you will.
That's a complicated
Yeah.
situation.
Yeah, administratively, I would really rather have this be one bucket. It's just, I know what that looks like being on a T-SPLOST committee, because then it looks like we had 11 million for PED projects and then 6 million for bike projects, and so that's 17 million, which to me as a committee member is like, oh, I'm low on money. Maybe Athens in Motion can come down from their 17 million versus like, okay, they got 11 million, they got 6 million. Can we put some people on the T-SPLOST committee? I mean, I am curious how that's going to work. Like,
I mean, is there a conflict of interest if we're too involved in all this stuff?
I wonder that, but I mean, there's so many committees and commissions in Athens-Clarke County. And of course, we absolutely do want all kinds of people on T-SPLOST, not just transit nerds like us.
I wouldn't think so, because they selected Lauren and me for this, even though they knew we were still active with the T-SPLOST Citizens Advisory Committee, right?
Right.
So I think it'd stand to go that it wouldn't be a conflict of interest the other way too.
Yeah, and it's not I guess it's not like we personally stand to gain anything from this. We're citizen volunteers. But Teresa, I do wonder that. I do wonder, like, do they not want us on there, or do they want us?
Yeah, see,
Because
somebody could just give us a little insight into that, because depending on how my life shapes up, I might be interested in doing work on the T-SPLOST. If they would have me.
Yeah, it's big. There's 22 members, so I mean, it's not like any. I mean, even if this wouldn't happen, even if we had the entire Athens in Motion Commission on this group, there would still be more people needed. And I don't know. I was going somewhere with that. Oh, but we will need some people to present our proposed projects to, which we will have that.
Right.
Of course, yeah, Elliot was on there too. So that's me, Aaron, and Elliot.
So, I mean, that's a good point that you brought up. So, Stephen, with TPW, do y'all have TPW sponsored projects and then TPW projects? And where will this fall?
Yeah, so we have direct projects that we will submit, and then we will also assist other entities with projects.
So will this be a project put forth by Athens in Motion Commission, and then we assist with that?
That's a good question. For this, I mean, I feel like that makes a lot of sense for it to be coming from Athens in Motion Commission, but we would be I think we'd be heavily involved with this one, probably more so than some of the other assistance that we provide.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And then another question for you guys is this going to be the only bucket of money that you seek out in the T-SPLOST, or are you wanting to branch out and have a few other like accessibility related projects, or I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Hmm.
Like
I
even
mean,
building out infrastructure, like bike assets and amenities.
say that again, Daniel.
Even just like building out like a bike rack project where y'all are, or free helmet program, where you've got like a certain amount of money to go towards that kind of outreach effort. It's not just about putting bike lanes down.
I think that we're limited in that
Mhm.
infrastructure, and we can use it for some operations though. Like
Yeah, that's
there's going to be a plan to pay for transit with T-SPLOS funds potentially.
Right. So I mean, like,
that's
go ahead.
just that's what we've run into is the eligibility limitations of SPLOS dollars and T-SPLOS dollars. So to your point, I mean, maybe you could consider installation of inventory like bike racks and repair stations as a potential construction project. But the things like the free helmet program would not be. That's programmatic. Outreach is programmatic. Education and flyers, that kind of stuff. We've been unable to convince the SPLOST office to even utilize their funds for things like that, even on specific projects. So that's where we run into limitations. But I know we did talk about, like you said, ADA accessibility improvements, and then local or neighborhood sidewalk program, which could have an equity basis to it.
Could bike share be used for SPLOST? It's equipment. It's not operations. You can buy you could buy the equipment and then you would contract out the operation. That's just a thought.
Did sustainability propose that last time?
I don't remember. Maybe they did, and maybe I'll double back and check. I mean, I know the goal or the intention was to potentially with the UGA system sort of form an have an MOU. But my remembrance of that was that Andrew Saunders had a sort of a general plan with that, but it never really got like worked up the flagpole correctly, and so it's sort of when that got brought up in higher level meetings, I think maybe some folks may have been like, surprised by it. So it never went very far. And then obviously the UGA system shut down. But I know UGA is still interested. I think it would have to, again, maybe be an MOU or maybe, I don't know. If the county was interested, I think there'd be a lot of interest. So.
Yeah, if you or anybody wants to kind of spearhead talking to Andrew, or I guess Mike Wharton at this point, to see if they're interested in that.
I mean, that like sort of bike share 1.0. So like all the big systems that you know about in DC and New York and all that. I mean, well, New York's a little different. It's a separate thing, but DC, Chicago, Boston, the cities, the municipalities own the equipment and they purchased it. And it's more or less like transit equipment. Which again creates some interesting ADA issues, and that's another issue altogether. But it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility that buying, if it's for equipment, that buying bike share, the stations or the bikes, that they could be included. It's just the operations is where it gets messy. So
What is MOU?
Memorandum of Understanding.
And I think, I mean, you may have mentioned this, but especially with the bike share, since that is more of a invite the private company in to make the money there. I don't know how much initial cost there is for that, unless we were to operate and build our own bike share.
It's a wild degree of variability based on the company and who they are, what they're offering, and it's. I mean, I have my preferences within the world of bike share because I worked within it and because I know some of the folks. But I think I'll just say this: I think the market for a place like Athens, I think because all the big cities are kind of gobbled up, I think a place like Athens will be a once there's a bit of a COVID rebound, I think it actually will be a very attractive place for a bike share. Bike share companies are going to need to diversify and start doing things in smaller cities. And I think you're going to start seeing more companies gearing themselves towards smaller cities, smaller systems, more flexibility that way. So.
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're looking at now is I've taken a screenshot of this. Is equity scoring. Orange is the highest equity scoring. Purple is second highest, followed by blue and
Mhm.
gray. And then red means we've got both sides. So just had people walk in on me.
No worries.
So, sorry, I'm in a meeting. Anyway, I really like this.
And we can even break it down into individual projects where each project is a different color. But I think kind of just, I mean, at the county level, you can see where those main corridors are. What I'd really like to also consider, which is not currently on here, let me highlight. So the projects that we have already got going on.
Daniel, while you're working on that, is this something you could host on Portal and make it a bit more user-friendly for the group with some filter toggles that are pretty easy to use?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Especially once I get it all kind of
Mm-hmm.
double checked and verified. I'm blanking. Riverbend Road.
Mm-hmm. Jefferson
What?
River Road.
That's so
Near the
Riverbend. We had these segments. This one actually got cut in half, right? And then yeah, Jefferson River Road. So, and then
Vincent, isn't Vincent getting something done?
there's a sidewalk project on Vincent, yeah. And so it'll be interesting as we rescore these with this existing info. And so here's a question to Stephen. When we run these scores, I'm assuming that connectivity to infrastructure that's already in place is pretty important. And so
It
are we
is.
going to
I
consider
would say that
these?
those would be updated again when I think you should wait until the full network update happens every 5 years to update those, because otherwise your the scores of every project shifts every time another project gets built, and that makes it it's a moving target.
Yeah.
That point.
I would love to be able to just spend a little time with this, as soon as it's ready for us to play with.
Yeah. And so yeah, so what I was showing earlier was that once we get all the data imported and lined up, then we can actually have a lot more information in these pop-ups where it can talk about this particular one is on Cleveland Avenue, it is tier 1, and then notes that are included. And I don't know if these are notes that would be published publicly, but Hillary's notes are buffered facility would require large impact on residential properties, so maybe look at bike boulevard treatments.
Oh, that's really helpful.
Mhm.
I'd love to be able to get those notes.
Yeah, so I guess, Stephen, it comes down to, like, do we want like a publicly available interactive map, or one that the commission can use during these planning stages coming up with projects?
Well, eventually we'll want a public facing one, and that's part of what Tool is building. It would really be probably limited to, or I wouldn't say limited, but the goal of it would be to show the entire proposed master plan and the breakdown of the scores so that it can understand why one road is scored differently from another. So that's what Tool Design Group is as they're building the prioritization tool, they're also building a story map tool that can be public facing. So this one, Daniel, might be a little bit more internal for now because it's got, you know, expert comments in it. It's got the a more technical breakdown of score, and I think it'll be very similar, but maybe a little bit more than the average person wants to read in the public, but exactly what AIM Commission wants to look at as they're making those
Right.
decisions.
Right. Yeah, I would see this as something that wouldn't really be all that useful out in the general public, but something that's a little bit simpler, like you're saying, that Tool is providing would be great.
Mm-hmm.
No, and then we also have like Atlanta Highway is a tier 1, double tier 1, along with Lexington Highway, and we know that those are both corridors that are undergoing studies. So are we planning on bringing forth those funding opportunities in addition to what those corridor groups have started? Because that's only $4 million. So you're not going to really be able to get the bike infrastructure you want or pedestrian for that corridor.
How do you figure out how much money you're going to need and when you're going to need it?
Engineering department division.
Okay, and when they do this high level study that they're doing now, does that give us a pretty good number to shoot for in terms of funding?
So we would need the Stephen, am I right in that Ronnie's team would be instrumental in helping us come up with estimates for those corridors in advance of the T-SPLOS applications?
Yes, and that's the big assistance that we usually provide, either internally or externally to the groups. So, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
we may even bring in one of our on-call consultants for these. Since they're so large, we want to make sure we're getting that order of magnitude correctly. Because as you know, with the original AIM scoring, the original plan, those prices I don't think were comprehensive enough, and they, you know, the Mayor and Commission have been frustrated in that they have not been able to rely on those prices when they're making their decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I think all that cost information in the AIM plan is pretty useless because we all know it's way under what the reality is.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And it's not even something that's scalable, is it?
yeah, no. So, I'm still trying to wrap my head around this whole funding system that we have here in Athens. So with T-SPLOST, is it a finite number? I mean, or do we have some idea of what the total pot could end up being when we do each one of these, or is it just sort of we say we want to come up with X dollars to pay for Y projects?
Yeah, okay. So I'm doing some estimates here based on like what we have seen with T-Splost, and I'm kind of being a little conservative here, but as months have gone on, our sales collections have gone up. So I'm going to estimate that the program is going to be about expecting $2 million a month for a 5-year program. So that's 24 million times 5. That's going to be the total cost. There's going to need to be some money for government bonds. So we should ask for a lot and plan to come back with an alternate and a second alternate. So I would start okay, so Teresa, to give you some idea, like for pavement maintenance, if we had enough money to keep up with our pavement maintenance schedule, we would have $8 million a year. And so my understanding is that's what TPW, right, Stephen, is going to ask for from the T-SPLOS program. So that's 8 million times 5.
Mm-hmm.
So 40 million. And they won't get that much, but that's just one project. and so pavement maintenance was the biggest project out of T-Splost, the last T-Splost. So, I mean, I would ask for a lot of money, but no one's going to get more than 40 million.
I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, let's say we ask for $1 billion total worth of work, let's just say. And the realistic amount of money that we might get from the T-Splost would be half that. So
I wish.
is that how you, I mean, you know, I'm just throwing numbers around. I don't know what they are. But I mean, which one is the one that kind of drives the process? Is it the presumed cap on what you're going to collect, or is it the
It's
wish
based-
list?
In this case, it's program length for T-Splost.
Program length.
Which is 5 years versus an amount. That sounds right? Right, y'all?
Okay, so they figure out what they're going to get in terms of tax collection through the T-Splost across 5 years.
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I think a starting point, an easy starting point is what we see on here. I mean, you could start off with, okay, all of the double tier 1 projects would cost this amount of money. And so I think step 1 is check in with Ronnie's team and say, you know, how much would these cost? Now, if there's any of these projects that you know that you're not interested in doing, like for instance, you know, this double tier 1 that goes out to wherever it is, Lexington Highway on the second
With
end.
Davis,
Uh,
where it goes
is
out
that-
to.
well, Whit Davis is right here.
Oh,
I'm gonna have to turn off this layer to see. Morton Road.
Hmm.
So there's a double
Yes.
tier 1 that goes from Whit Davis to Morton Road. It might be important to kind of see why. So yeah, it looks like it's because it's so fast, and Hillary was saying that it would be updated to be a separated facility instead of just buffered. But you know, if that's something where it's like, well, let's just take it out to Southeast Clarke Park. So identifying kind of your big scale of which project do you want engineering to get quotes for, not quotes, estimates for. And then from there, you can say, well, we know we're not going to be able to even start with 100 million. So let's thin our projects out to this set of absolutely what we want to get done in the next 5 years. And then you build your backups and your priorities from there.
Okay. I'm gonna have to spend a little time thinking about this.
Stephen,
Yeah.
Lauren,
would that be a bad idea? Sorry, go ahead.
no, that's not a bad idea at all. You know, start from the biggest need and move out. Lauren had asked a question earlier, and I think this is, and since we're reaching the end of time with this, I thought that it might be good to go back and recap. So the different funding decisions that you're going to need to make soon, whether it's as this small group or presenting them back to the large group. One is which T-Splost proposals you want to put forward. So whether it's one big bucket, 2 big buckets, and then also the smaller projects that you might want to go for, the ones that we've mentioned so far, the ADA accessibility and local neighborhood sidewalks. And then you also need to figure out what you want to do with the remaining T-Splost 2018 funds. There's about $3.5 million of PED money and maybe $300,000 of bike money. And that could change. Both of those numbers could change based on the Barber vote, but I will guess that there will at least be $3 million in pedestrian money left to figure out what to do with.
So would you guys be able to like make a list of 3 or 4 $3 million soup to nuts projects, or is that not reasonable?
Well, the other thing to note is I think it's helpful to like look at the projects in terms of identifying an amount of money, so you have a good idea of where that money would go. But identifying, coming up with the amount of money and then writing the proposal in such a way where it's more of a bucket of money and not for these specific projects.
Gotcha.
For the remaining for the remaining funds, and maybe that's what you were asking about, Teresa, for that 3
Yes.
million. What I might consider is what we're talking about is starting a project that would overlap with T-SPLOS 2022. So take that into a consideration, that just because we don't have bike funds today, by the time we get around to this project, there may be bike funds. But what you could also do is use this map, look at the tier 1 sidewalks that you feel like are make the most sense, and maybe even give precedence to the ones that you don't feel like need bike improvements at all. So then you would feel more comfortable just moving forward with PED money. But that's where this comes in. Maybe the first experiment is using this map to figure out which of those tier 1 PED projects you'd want to move on as soon as possible.
Okay, I know Teresa's got to go, so we need to figure out what could be our next PED projects, and we need basically criteria for selecting our next group of tier 1 projects, such as, hey, give me all the tier 1 projects that are high in equity and are double for us to look at as a list, and then give me after that, give me all the tier 1 PED only, all the tier 1 bike only. And then from that, we look at and we suss out like, okay, this is T-SPLOST, this is T-SPLOST, this is potentially T-SPLOST. But then what we present to the T-SPLOST Citizens Advisory Committee is, we want this amount of money for bike PED projects for our tier 1 projects. And in the presentation, we give them some examples of what our list is. Maybe it's the list that we've officially voted on, but in the referendum language, it will be for high tier bike PED projects to give us flexibility. And then we also maybe put in a project for ADA upgrades. And this is a separate conversation, but maybe I want to have be supportive of or lead the charge for intersection improvements for PEDs in particular, or I guess bikes too.
Yeah.
Money.
Yeah.
Well, as usual, I'm overwhelmed.
Yeah. I mean, Daniel, is that just something we can ask for from you today? Like, can we have a list of those the way I put it? Double check.
Yeah. Just if you send it an email, because what I can do is I can take this and kind of spit it out into a table. And I mean, it will be easier to give you that list once all of the data sets are merged, but I do have that data, in the various locations where I could kind of compile it if you needed that.
Okay. I'll ask you for that in writing, and I will CC everyone on this call. And Teresa, I know you've got to go. I don't want to yell at us.
No, he wouldn't. He's not allowed to yell at you.
Okay.
He wouldn't anyway. But I appreciate it, and I appreciate all of you. And see you next time.
Okay. Bye, Teresa.
Safe travel.
Thanks, Jason.
Great. It's very helpful. I've taken a screenshot of this map. I will write this out to you, Daniel. In our next meeting, I tentatively put on the calendar, or I put on here, it would be Wednesday, June 9th. Will we all be around for that? Okay.
Yes, I believe that.
Yeah, maybe we'll have some projects to look at as a draft list, and we can go from there.
So that's June 9th. What time?
5 p.m.
5 to 6.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Also, Aaron, congratulations on your engagement. And I'm sorry that I didn't know that at our
Oh,
promotion
Yeah.
meeting.
why would you have known? It's thank you.
You posted it, and I was like,
Oh.
oh no, we went through the whole meeting, and I didn't say anything.
We all have lives. We all have other things to do and spend all the time on social media. But thank you. I really appreciate that.
It's
Thank you.
awesome.
It's awesome. Congrats.
Wait, you guys have lives?
Yeah, outside of transit. Okay.
Oh, one thing that, and Daniel, this might be something you, not to add to your list of things to look up, but we were looking at the community mapping lab, like the demographic kind of, you could highlight each, and those are the districts based on the elementary school, like LSGTs or whatever, right?
I believe so.
Grace Bagwell and maybe other folks had given us some of the raw data around, particularly around, I think they use the term like amenities. Like they asked people to like, what are their top 5 amenities they want? And like trails and bike lanes and sidewalk, it was like every single neighborhood, it was listed as like the top thing. And I know we can't really use that as a data, it's more qualitative, and we can't necessarily use that as a data point within like where to put projects, but I think it's certainly useful for you to have, for us to have, but for you to have as a reference point, knowing that there is at least a somewhat statistically significant survey done in a particular area that says people do actually want these things. Like even if the loudest voices are saying we don't want these things, or we don't think it's a priority. Anyway, I'll look for it, but it might be worth
Yeah,
looking
if you
up.
can find it, it used to be really easy to find, and they added a lot of really useful things like the social equity or social atlas. I'm not sure what the name of that is now. The one I showed earlier.
Right.
There used to be a full report where you'd have PDS for each district, and that's really helpful to have in either grant applications or even to use in presentations like this. You can't use it to determine necessarily like
Right.
project location, but it's very helpful to have that on a PowerPoint slide to say, look at this information. So
right. I'll try to track that down. I mean, it might be this. Just throwing something in the chat. I know we got to go. It might be that, but I'll double check and see if I can find something else.
yeah, if you can find I'm sure they have it on the page, and if you have a contact with her, it might be easier to just reach out to her to see. Where.
Okay. Yeah, it looks like maybe you can, but it doesn't have them all. Again, the amenity thing, it doesn't have it listed for every one. You've got to go school by school or whatever. We'll take a look later.
This is the page I was looking for. So if you click on Gaines English, for instance, that is the English version. So I'll just do one more screen share. So this has demographics, education,
right,
assistance, housing, and
I think it's under amenities further up. I think you went by it. I think it's up there. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh wait.
Either way, it's just an interesting thing.
Okay, so that's neighborhood problems and amenities. We're probably gonna go.
There it is. Yeah. So like, yeah. So for each neighborhood or each LSGT area, it's got those top 5 or 6. And again, for a lot of them, this might be one of the ones that doesn't, but for a lot of them, it's got multi-use paths and sidewalks as like the top things on almost every single one. So again, it's more qualitative data, but still worthwhile.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. It's very interesting.
Yeah, you can do that for every school. You can go to every school district or elementary school district, LSGT level. So
cool.
Nice.
Okay, y'all. That's all I've got.
Awesome. I'll get that answered for you when you send it to me, and I'll package that together for you. So.
Thank you. See y'all.
Have a good one. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Y'all.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.